of my top videos on my channel is my Nisekoi top 5 characters. It's something I kind of look back on and think I would change a lot of the picks for this video, but I also think back and think I want to do an analysis on each of the characters. And every time I thought that, compared to when I actually started doing it, I now realize I thought way too lightly of this project and did not fully realize how bad this would be. Not to say Nisekoi is bad on retrospective, far from it. But the problem was the length of the series. And as I kept reading it for research's sake, it hit me a lot of things that I didn't realize while reading week to week, but reading while benching were sort of problems that would emphasize when you just kept reading and reading. So, please keep that in mind that a lot of these things are coming from a benching prospect rather than a week-to-week prospect. As a series for week-to-week, I think the series is rather good. But anyway, let's start with the analysis, shall we? Let's begin with our analysis on Chitoge. Chapter 1 through 52, Season 1 of the anime. In the first 52 chapters of the manga, as well as the first season of the anime, Chitoge is a brash, beautiful, and quick-to-anger girl from America. She is noted to be half Japanese. In order to stop two gang groups from fighting each other, Ranku and Chitoge must act like a couple in order to stop them from fighting. However, the two greatly hate each other and can't really like each other because of their differing personalities. Or rather, their similar personality just contracts each other too much. This is the main premise of the series until a certain point. More so, the premise of the series for the first 52 chapters in the first season of the anime. Due to a promise Raku made in the past, he finds himself in a situation where four girls from his past has come back, and he wished to discover the truth of his locket. One of these girls happened to be Chitoge. Now that the backstory is finally out of the way, let's talk about her personality. She is often described by some as a gorilla for her brashness and brute strength. There's times when we see her cook or bake something and it came out looking terrible, but it was rather good. Though it could be debated if it was because of Raku help, but it should be mentioned when Raku was sick, his gang family ate the rest of his porridge and said it was good. Chitoge is rather book smart, to where she could get into any university, but she's also really dense and sometimes can come off as a bit of a diss. As the series goes on, we do find out why she seems so ditzy all the time, and it's mainly due to her having a sheltered lifestyle. The mafia group behind her father, Beehive, have to keep her sheltered in order to keep her safe. One member of Beehive happened to be Chitoge's best friend and bodyguard, that person being Sumiki. Throughout the first 52 chapters, as well as the first season of the anime, we see Sumiki be rather protective of Chitoge, as she doesn't want her to be corrupted, in her words, by Raku. But Chitoge also hides her secret about her relationship with Raku from her in order to not let the rest of the gang know. Throughout the first season of the anime and the first 52 chapters of the manga, Chitoge conflict is her understanding of herself. She doesn't understand her own feelings and must come to understand her developing feelings for Raku. Due to these conflicting emotions, as well as her anger issues, she is quick to go to violence as well as misunderstand things. When she does, she gives her best effort to apologize for her misunderstanding. Sometimes she quickly understands a misunderstanding and help Raku out of a bad situation. Keep this in mind as we go on with this analysis. Sidekicks. I didn't really expect to make this a section, but I guess I have to anyway. Chitoge is a bit weird as she somewhat lacks a sidekick. While Sumiki is supposed to be Chitoge's sidekick, it's understandable why the author put Sumiki in the main role instead of the sidekick role. This isn't to say that Sumiki stopped acting as a sidekick at all, nor does it say that she stopped acting as Chitoge's sidekick. However, it's more so that she entered the main role and most of her sidekick acts are usually more so in actually progressing her character. Nisekoi tend to give every one of its heroines a sidekick. These are more so to push the main heroines to go further with their goals. The main role of the sidekick is to aid the main role in their growth or in their pursuit of romance. This can be seen with Rui and Onodera, Raku and Shu, and Sumiki and Paula. Sumiki doesn't really do either of these things for Chitoge, mainly because, well, she doesn't know about the secret she's holding. But the author and the fans really liked her, so they just added her to the main roster of the main fine girls. Despite Chitoge's lack of a sidekick, I think it works as it increases how much it means when she does do these things without help. It makes her trials against her feelings to feel much more rewarding when she finally makes a breakthrough. Chapter 53 through 106. Nisekoi has a total of 229 chapters, and we aren't even at the halfway point. I mentioned Sidekicks just before because it's a character like Haru who slowed down the pace of the series immensely. As soon as she shows up, the progression of the series starts to really slow down. The character makes really little progress in terms of getting closer to their goals, as well as getting closer to Raku. This slower progression happens to damage a lot of characters in a certain way. One of these characters being Chitoge herself. While it's not as bad as later on, some of her small quirks have been blown out of proportion. For example, one small quirk was that whatever she felt would look disgusting, but she tasted it. Now she's just a bad cook, because we can't get enough of that to account. I'll just briefly talk about my annoyance with this type of show. I don't really think it's funny that, haha, women cannot cook, because it's a common human thing that some people can't cook. I don't really think it's an actual joke, and the reason why they use it so much is really dumb. We also had America, a character I failed to mention in the first part, but I'm going to mention here now. Whenever she got up to her antic, while Chitoge would get annoyed, she wouldn't really get off the fence annoyed. Now, whenever Marika does anything involving Raku, she gets pissed. Heck, even talking to him, she gets pissed about it. Before, while she did like to eat big servings, now they portray her more like a glutton. Again, I don't really think it's really funny that, haha, the joke is that she's a woman, so she shouldn't eat as much. I don't really think those type of gender-like jokes are really that funny. But anyway, I would also like to mention another thing. For Onodera has similar flaws. She can't really cook, nor can she really do much lady-like things. She doesn't have the coordination for it. However, the difference is that that's part of her character progression. Both of these things that constantly are being used as jokes for Chitoge aren't really part of her character progression and are really just unnecessary. In terms of character progression throughout these chapters, we see Chitoge is much more comfortable with her feelings. But this doesn't stop the misconfusion joke. In fact, they are much more frequent. Because of course they are. We also see her be much more vulnerable now. We see her weaknesses as well as her flaws and how she is slightly insecure about them. We also see her have a huge amount of pride and value in Sumiki as a friend. These are proofs that she still is progressing, and while it's a lot slower and more subtle than the first 52 chapters, when looking at the bigger picture, she has grown a lot since the start of the series. Also, during these set of chapters, we find out more about Chitoge's family, more so on her mother's side. We find out why her mother isn't really part of her life, and it's mainly because she's constantly working. Due to this neglect, Chitoge believed that she wasn't loved by her mother, when in actuality, her mother did love her, but she constantly had to work in order to make sure that Chitoge had a good life. Thanks to Raku, the two finally are able to express their feelings to each other, finally realizing that they both do love each other deeply. Chapter 107 through 162. So, remember when I said it gets worse for Chitoge in terms of jokes? Yeah. Chitoge has now become a complete glutton, and a majority of her jokes are now sadly food related around here. She also became a complete diss who's only smart when needed to be, and all of her rational thinking from the beginning of the series is now gone. This was mostly done in the sake of comedy, and while comedy is subjective and I don't really like a majority of her jokes, I also have to say I understand why they were done. This allows Chitoge to be more reactionary and, well, more expressive. Chitoge expressiveness has also been a big point of this series, so to have her be more expressive would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Well, personally speaking, I feel like this did more damage than it did good, and it was less funny than what it was in the first place. But I also have to say this made me appreciate where she is allowed to be smart and talented as she used to be. We do see Chitoge more vulnerable and even cries at some point, but I feel her progression with Raku has mostly halted, as I feel she rarely did anything during these chapters. It's not even like she isn't putting in the effort, but Mirka, Haru, Yui, Tsumugi, and Onodera all make much bigger progress. Though I would say Haru steals a lot of Chitoge's screen time, the irony is not passed on me. However, if you're wondering what exactly is the irony is that Haru and Chitoge are basically the same character. Haru is essentially just a younger version of Chitoge, and that's really all I ever saw her as. And in doing so, they just constantly try to give Haru some character development. And in these character development, they also halted the plot progression, and Haru ends up being the worst character in the series because she actively screws over the series. Before I end this section, I also like to mention a certain thing about this section. In this small section, there's a small mini arc of a few chapters. This small mini arc happened to involve Chitoge, Raku, and a princess from a foreign country that happened to look a lot like Chitoge. When I was reading the series week to week, I wasn't really bothered by this arc. However, when I finally got back to binging it for this retrospective / analysis, I realized how much I hate this arc. Remember how my complaints about Haru was that she felt like a second Chitoge and added nothing more to the plot, actively halting it and not actually progressing anyone. Now imagine a complete arc where all the characters happen to be halted for this fake character that will never return again. But wait, you might say, these chapters happen to be a progression arc for Chitoge, so why exactly are you saying that it halts it? To put it in the most bluntest term, it doesn't exactly progress Chitoge, nor does it progress their relationship. The only thing it really does is show that Raku notices Chitoge as a person, something that he has mentioned multiple times. And the bigger issue with this arc, if it is a progression for Chitoge, is the lack of Chitoge in this actual arc. Yes, the princess may look like Chitoge, but she acts nothing like Chitoge. In fact, she acts more like Onodera. So, you're starting to see my point. This is a pointless arc, has no progression, and ultimately does nothing for Chitoge. Chapter 163 to Ending. Alright guys, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have been working on this analysis for over a year, and I am really tired of reading Nisekoi. As I keep reading and keep reading, the series has gotten much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Stale. And I need to complete this analysis. I'm going to be mad if I don't complete this analysis. So I'm just going to go for the rest of this from memory, and it might just be better this way. I apologize for the lack of manga panels really at this point, but yes, I'm going to have to just go off of memory, and hopefully the rest of this video isn't really that bad. So these next 60 chapters are actual progression for characters, and that Ranku just pretty much denies all of them, except for Chitoge. And the only progress we see for Chitoge is that she now becomes way more shy about her own emotions for Ranku, to the point where she cannot admit them to him. This is a rather natural flow for the story, and I think it's really well done considering how much we've been seeing throughout the series Chitoge being less and less comfortable with her own emotions. We also been seeing her be more vulnerable, and we've been seeing her been in a more weakened state. However, I also have to mention I do miss the times where she is this strong, powerful woman that can handle a lot of situations. Not to say she still can't as much, but I feel like a lot of the situations she's constantly put in, she just can't handle them. However, I also have to mention that in these chapters of progression, most of them till the last actual arc don't really involve Chitoge. So there's only a few small things I have to mention. One, her goodbye to America. Her goodbye to America is rather heartfelt. It shows that she did care for America as a friend and didn't just actually hate her guts. She felt genuinely bad about Raku just shooting her down. However, after seeing Raku shoot down America, she was afraid that she would be shot down too by, well, Raku. And again, like I said before, it shows her progression in her more vulnerability. But it feels we kind of gone backwards in a way. Sure, she's more vulnerable to her own emotions, but what about her understanding of her emotions? It seems like she's more scared of her emotions rather than being understanding of them. This is sort of a bigger problem with the ending of Nisekoi. A lot of the characters' actual progression endpoint isn't actually their endpoint that the series have been building up to. And this has been much more apparent as I binged this. It's more apparent that, well, the series should have went with the idea of Chitoge coming to understand her emotions rather being afraid of them. It should have been like this for a lot of characters, but I'm not talking about those characters right now. We see for the next couple of chapters, for the last couple of chapters actually, that, well, the two finally admit their feelings for each other and they both become what they desired. Raku becomes a good civil savant, using his gang to do good deeds, unlike the fact that they were already doing that before, but I'm not going to talk about that. Chitoge ends up being a fashion designer, and her model is Sumugi. Though I can think of a better job for Sumugi with the series progression, but I'm not going to talk about that and leave that for the Sumugi analysis I'm bound to make sooner or later. Conclusion. So it's been a day since I recorded the original conclusion, and I had some time to actually rethink my thoughts, and I was kind of ashamed of the original conclusion I gave because I just started just kind of ranting in a sense. But to say the least, yes, I am disappointed on how Chitoge character turned in the end. She wasn't the fun character that I fell in love with in the beginning of the series. To say the least, she definitely changed and is for the worse for the most part. However, that doesn't take away from the fact that she was amazing when she was first arrived. And as more characters got added, a lot of her unique traits just died out. And I think this is mostly all due to the fact that, well, a long running series, you have to do what's come easiest for you after a while. So, my overall thoughts. I think Chitoge is an amazing character. The only downside is her conclusion, the end of her character arc. Because her arc was an actual amazing one being that embracing one's own emotions. You don't often get that type of arc with characters. And when you do, you don't really get them being as overt as they usually are. Here, Chitoge typically had to face her emotions, and I really like that aspect. The only aspect I didn't really like is the fact that Ranku constantly helped her. She never had to deal with her emotion on her own, and I think that was a shame because it could have been a good opportunity for her to see how strong she is. But the series at the end of this, it all ended up having Shitoge be more reliant on Sumigi and as well as Ranku. I don't think that's bad per se. I personally don't like it, but I can understand other people liking it. And if you do like Shitoge Endpoint, then congrats. I'm happy for you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry for how long this video was. This has been a project and a half, and I hope you guys have watched all the way to the end. But once again, thank you so much.